Hi, everyone, and thanks for being on the channel. Today we have the legendary RikaShae with us. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to have you to talk about a lot of run stuff because that's how I got to know your work. But first of all, I would like you to introduce yourself a bit, where you're from and how you got into rap music, graffiti art, and all of that.
Yeah. So I'm RikaShae or Shay, whatever you want to call me. Um I I'm from San Diego, California, originally. I've lived all over. I've been all over the world. So um joined the army when I was 18, so I moved to Texas and I was stationed there. And then I
Okay.
got deployed to just Louisiana, South Korea, Bosnia, California from there. And
Wow.
then after I got out of the military, I moved to Detroit, which was
Okay.
a real cultural change for me and weather change. And then now I live in Las Vegas.
Oh, yes, another weather change there.
Well, Las Vegas was much more closer to like Texas and California where I
Yeah.
spent most of my life, so that it was much nicer.
So how did you come across rap music as a kid? Because it was probably a little while ago, right? It's nothing new to you.
Yeah, when I was, I always joke that I was, 11 or 12 years old, walking around rapping Easy E lyrics that I had no idea what they were, what they meant, or yeah. So I mean, I basically like have listened to just like the radio rap and R&B that was out, and then I got like there's a movie called Colors, and it's about the gangs in LA and cops, and Ice-T has a song on there. That was like the
Yep.
first tape that I ever had. Um, I think my older cousin gave it to me, and I was blown away by just the flow and the rhythm and the, like I said, 11, 12 years old walking around rapping Ice-T.
Yeah. And so did you did your friends did were you in circles where everybody was into that and you were just
Yeah.
going with the flow there?
Yeah. And I kind of thought that that's how it was in just, wherever you went. And then when I started to move around the world and see other places, it like the break dancers weren't graffiti artists everywhere else, or
Yeah.
the graffiti artists weren't into rap. I met so many graffiti artists that listen to heavy metal or, just not had anything to do with the hip hop culture at all,
Yeah.
but they had the graffiti culture. And the breakdancers were the same way. A lot of the breakdancers I met in Texas had nothing to do with graffiti art, had no like real knowledge of like the hip hop culture. It was just they liked breakdancing and they did it.
Yeah. And so when did you start getting a real interest in the graffiti art? And have you always been an artist at heart, or?
I've been an artist. I have memories of being a little kid drawing. I just the graffiti art part was like once I met these guys and these started hanging out with like the hip hop kids. We everybody was doing it, so you just learn from them. And then basically, like if you couldn't break dance, you're sitting in a living room or something, you're sitting at somebody's house. We all had sketchbooks. We all carried our backpacks with our music
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff, and we'd pull out our sketchbooks and we'd all start drawing in each other's sketchbooks. And you got this guy telling you, oh, don't do that to your letter. Like it looks stupid or that color looks dumb or add this highlight to here. And then, so you're learning from each other and it's a big group of like just passing on that knowledge. The crazy part was we didn't have the internet. So,
Yeah, that was what I was going to say, is that was all before the internet. So the
yeah,
interaction between people was completely different because you now I know that my kids, they automatically go to the internet. If they want to know something, they go on YouTube, on Google, and they just, check it out in a second. And I remember, because I was born before the internet too. So I remember just having to go to someone to ask, you had to think about who had the knowledge, to teach you something, and who would know about stuff. So usually there were a lot more interactions between friends and people about, learning from each other too.
yeah, real tight knit, like, yeah, and you go and you find a graffiti magazine and then you're passing that around with your
Yeah.
friends. And when we were in Texas, I actually met, so I was from San Diego, but I was stationed in Texas. My best friend I met him in Texas, but he was from Chicago, and
Okay.
he was way better of a breakdancer than I was. So I had
Oh,
like a
because
whole
you did dance then a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was a very competitive breakdancer. But it was before
Cool.
there was like tournaments and prize money and
Yeah.
sponsorships and things like that. So
Yeah.
when I was still doing it, kind of like just practicing and stuff, it was still a big part of my life, but it was me by myself. And then when I met Mark, who is from Chicago, who was really, really dope. He's just insane. He's still like a legend today because he never stopped.
Okay. Right.
So we just our cultures were the same. So Chicago was a lot like San Diego, where they were into graffiti, they were into all the different
Yep.
rap scenes, underground rap music. Oh, we were traveling all over
Yeah.
Texas looking for breakdancers. And so every weekend we would drive up to Dallas, or we'd drive to San Antonio, or we'd drive to Houston, and we would meet breakdancers. And I really credit him with a lot because this was before internet. So
Yep.
we would go to one city, we would either battle a crew or just hang out with them, practice with them, and then go to like an event with them. And then a few months later, when we would go back to that city, you'd see them all doing his moves or my moves. And it was kind of like we were teaching them, bringing in this culture that hadn't been there. And that's kind of
Yeah.
how it was, because in San Diego, we were lucky enough. There was a guy from the Rocksteady crew, which is like the most famous crew from the history of breakdancing.
Mhm.
And they were all from New York. They were all in the old school breakdancing movies and stuff like that, because
Yeah. Yeah.
they were the guys, and they were like the founders. And one of them moved to San Diego and LA area. So we're like 14, 15, learning from this like a guy named Easy Rock, who is just like a legend.
That's amazing.
And that's how you learned. You didn't
Yeah.
have like you couldn't YouTube like how to do a windmill. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you had to watch somebody do it and figure it out. But that person had to learn it from somebody. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it was a cool culture back then. My last year of high school, I got in a lot of trouble, and I was in a pretty bad fight with my parents, and they wanted to ground me until I turned 18.
Oh, wow.
And so this would have been like, I'm like, so, I'm going to be, I'm grounded, but then the next day I could vote. Like, this is so dumb. And so I moved out. I lived on the streets for a while. Well, not on the streets. I'm lying. I lived with friends. So
Yeah.
I lived with one friend until his mom kind of was like, what is going on? Like, like,
So you
and
were
then,
jumping from house to house.
right, right. And then I ended up moving in with my grandma
Okay.
into a town that was up in the mountains, and it's really like a little tiny, tiny, tiny town right outside of San Diego. And it was weird because I was expecting like hillbillies and rednecks and mountain people, and there's a lot of group homes out there because it was up in the mountains, and because it, like I think it's to help separate them from the gangs that they're in
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever problems they're having. Well, high school that I went to did have like the guys, the cowboy hats, and it was a whole new culture for me. But it also had some of the most hardcore like gangsters and just real bad people that I had ever been around. So it was a real weird like, wow, everybody's out here to like escape like the cities, but like the worst of them are here in this little town.
Yeah.
And I met a kid named Brandon who was just the dopest graffiti artist that I had met so far. And he lived out in he lived out where these group homes were. So like he lived out in the woods, like past like dairy farms and
Yeah. Yeah.
just nothing out there. And he had a big garage and a big barn and a big shed. And his mom was very into graffiti art. She wasn't, but she was very supportive of it.
Yeah.
So she was like a graphic designer back like before it was all like online and
Okay. Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And so she would buy us the paint. Well, we would have to give her the money, but she would get the paint for us, and she would let us paint anywhere on the property. So
Oh,
we were,
cool.
all the garage and the shed and the barn, everything was painted, and we were just learning all these different techniques. And it was really, really like that's really what elevated me from just scribbling stuff on paper and really not knowing. I knew what the really good graffiti artists were doing, but I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I met a really good graffiti artist, and we just started doing collaborations together. And we did, me and him did this really big wall in the city or in the town in a construction site where they were building some type of building. And it was serial killers, but it was all the serial cartoon characters like looking crazy and with knives and stuff. And it filled up the whole wall. Like it was a huge production that me and him did.
Amazing. During that time, were you already writing lyrics, or was that something that came up later?
Yeah, so I'd always written when I was young, not really seriously. The thing, the what really drove me into writing lyrics was while I was in Bosnia, actually. Because we had a lot of free time, so we sat and I was in the infantry. And as an infantry, you don't have a job really. You you basically get used for whatever anybody wants to use you for.
Yeah.
One day we got a message that the headquarters office would be open from midnight till 8 in the morning if anybody wanted to use the computers.
Ah, okay.
So it happened to be like my shift ended at 12 at night, and then my next shift wasn't until like 10 in the morning or something like that. So I just went into the thing and I was like sending emails to people, but nobody had emails. So it was like kind
Yeah.
of pointless. And I found these chat rooms that you could go into. And there was like these hip hop chat rooms. So I went into the hip hop chat rooms on like Yahoo Messenger or whatever it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was a lot of people writing raps and then other people judging them, or most, you get the you suck, stop, or you get like that was a dope bar, like, but it doesn't flow. And you get a lot of advice and feedback. And
Yeah.
somebody told me that I was copying Eminem. Well, they said Slim Shady. You're just copying Slim Shady. Because
What year was that?
this was in 90, it had to be 97 or 98.
97, 98. So that means the Sim Shady LP was already out? No, it was
So
just, no, it wasn't out yet.
it was out. So
Was it?
it must have been 98, but
So it was, yeah, was
it
right at
had
that
just
time.
come out and
Yeah.
I had no idea what it was. So they're like, "Oh, look at this Slim Shady." Cuz I
Oh,
had
you
like
didn't know about it?
no, I didn't know about it. So we're in
Oh,
Bosnia and we have no connection to what's going on in the United States.
yeah, of course.
And they're like, "You don't know who Eminem is?" Like everybody knows who he is. Like he's the biggest thing. And I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about. And so I had a friend that I used to talk to really we wrote letters crazy ever since I was in the military. And he was my good friend Jason from San Diego. And I go, "Yo, who the fuck is Eminem?" And he's like, "Yo, he's so sick." Like, so he bought the CD and sent it to me.
Oh,
And
great.
I'm just walking around with the CD, like putting my headphones on people, like,
Yeah, yeah,
listen to
yeah.
this shit. So a lot of my army friends will tell me now, like, like you're the one that introduced it, because I was like really pushing it. I loved it. It was so sick, that first
Oh,
album.
yeah. That album is amazing. Yeah.
But I had like the rhymes that I wrote were very similar to like his like shock type style, like I was
Okay.
saying just little stuff like I'll wrap you in barbed wire and roll you down a mountain, force feed you water so you look like a fountain. Like it was just silly like stuff, but they're like, "Yeah, you copying Slim Shady," and I'm like, I have no idea who that is. Like, I think I was taking some college classes just because I had the GI Bill,
Yeah.
which like pays you if you're in the military. And I was just
Yeah.
like, oh, I could just go to a couple of college classes, and really we were like, we could meet some girls at college and get paid to go do it. But we
Yeah.
spent all of our time in the computer lab just going on these forums and downloading like Napster and LimeWire, because
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
trying to, it'd take like 20 minutes to download a song on at home on your dial up.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so long.
And then we
Yeah. I
found out you
remember.
could download like 100 songs at a time on the college internet, and it was like fast as hell.
Well, I remember, I think it was just when Frey 2001 came out, and I didn't have the money to go and buy the album, and I thought I'm just going to download it, and I'm just going to do it like at night. So my parents, because we had a family computer,
Right,
so we
right.
had just one computer in the house, and And so I thought, I'm going to do, some sneaky stuff. I'm just going to, start the download when they go to bed. And then in the next morning, I'll have it. And I think the entire album, it was like the download showed that it would go on for something like 2.5 days. And I was like, oh, it was just different times.
Yeah,
But then in the end, a friend of mine, had she had bought it, and someone, I think her boyfriend, gifted her the same album, so she gave it to me.
that's cool.
And yeah.
I lived literally in a studio apartment, so it was like my bed and then the computer and like the kitchen and the bathroom,
Okay.
just one little square.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I took out my closet or half of my closet, made that into like a recording booth where it was all padded and the mic
yeah,
was in
yeah.
there, and it started having like other rappers coming over and recording, and
Okay.
it was really cool. So like started to really like. I also made beats at the time, so I was selling my beats to go to college.
Okay.
With the GI Bill. That's how I made my money, was
Yeah,
selling
yeah.
beats and getting the GI Bill. And then I think I met my girl, and it was kind of like where I just stopped rapping. Like just it was like a dead stop.
Okay.
And it
All
was
right.
mostly because of the content. Like, and I felt like you can't rap if you're not rapping about girls and drugs and fighting and things like that. So
That's the idea you had at the time.
yeah. And then I realized you really can. There's a lot of content out there that's not about that. So
Well, now there is so much, and there are, more and more rappers that are doing content that is, far away from all of that stuff. But at the time, I think we weren't really exposed to a lot of that. I mean, most of the rap that was out there was about girls and drugs and money.
yeah,
So, I mean, it was really the vibe at the time. And so we didn't really, I think nobody really knew that there could be a kind of an intersection between something, a little more thoughtful and rap.
definitely
Probably,
not.
probably there
Yeah,
were guys doing it, but they weren't as big as,
exactly. I was
the
gonna say
biggest one.
there it was there, but it was definitely not in the mainstream where everybody was hearing it.
And so do you stop with the rap, but you continued with the graffiti art then?
Um, not. I did more graffiti art than rapping for sure. I would. It would. It'd be like I would get like this itching where I'd want to do it again. So
Yeah.
then I'd go and buy a sketchbook and I'd go and buy markers, and I still had like I still have it. It's like this little tackle box that I had ever since I was a kid.
Okay.
I'll pull it out. Hold on.
Yeah.
So I've actually had this since I was like 13
Amazing.
or 14 years, and it's literally just like a fishing tackle box,
Yeah.
but we would put all of our markers in it.
Oh yeah, right. Okay, so you have loads of markers and colors and everything there.
Yeah. And then I would get this itching that I wanted to start drawing again,
Yeah.
and I'd go buy a sketchbook and I'd bust this out and I'd do like 4 or 5 drawings, and then would put it back down and never touch it again for years.
But so just on paper then.
Yeah, just on paper.
Okay. And how did you because that's something that I wanted to touch upon, because it's really for me, I have always had a, a general predisposition for art or creation in general. And so I've always uh, played a lot of music. I've played different instruments in my life. I've sang a lot. I've drawn a lot. And so I've painted, photography, whatever. And um, I could always see that there was a correlation between the times where I felt the most myself, and when I felt I could really express myself were the times where I was creating, and the times where I maybe was going through some stuff or was really depressed were also times where I wasn't creating. And so most of the times when I get, down and depressed, I know that if I start playing my guitar, singing, drawing a bit, doing something, creating something, usually it helps me, to get me out of that. And so how did you experience those times, because you were saying you got the itch at some point, you were always, you know, you needed to go back to it, because I think if you are a creator in general or an artist, you really have that need to create and the need to do something about it, and you can't just stay the rest of your life without doing anything anymore.
Yeah.
So how did you feel in those times where you weren't creating? Because that means that, from what you've told me, you had quite a fair amount of time where you were creating a lot and doing a lot of different things, and where you were around very creative people all the time. And if that came to an abrupt stop, how did you feel after that, in that time where you weren't creating anymore?
Yeah, so to me, like, I didn't realize that it was affecting me. It was never like I grew up in my dad was very, very like hardcore. So he's a Vietnam veteran that grew up on a farm, like no emotion whatsoever, other than just
Yeah,
like having fun. Like he was a fun person, but there was no like emotional talks or like we didn't sit down and talk about like how we were feeling, you know. And then
yeah,
I joined the military and I was in the infantry and it was the same thing, you know. That's
yeah,
you just suck it up and you know, it's the people that do kind of become outcasts or you know are looked down upon. And I never realized that my art was really uh like an escape for me or a release for me. And then I look at certain I still have sketchbooks all the way back till since I have like some of my first drawings. And when I look at them, I see like a lot of anger in the drawings and
yeah,
like, oh wow, so this is, you know, then I think, okay, that was this time. What was happening to me then? And
yeah,
then I look at this drawing and this is really cool drawing. This is like more nostalgic. And that's what I would do. That's those nostalgic ones were the ones where I would get that itch and I want to get back into it. And it's almost like a midlife crisis. Like I really miss creating and, you know, so I would do like stuff about San Diego and, you know,
yeah,
breakdancer, you know, on the side with the beep, you know, boom box and music coming out. And I'm like, well, so this is what I've always been drawn back to that. And I think when I started drawing again was when I found it was when like the pandemic happened and I
okay,
started I'd never used YouTube before. I mean, I did like clicked on videos and watched them and things like that, but I never really used it. And then I found Harry Mack and Prof and
yeah,
um, I wanted to draw like Harry got me really back into like hip hop, like the culture of hip hop
yeah,
because he
yeah,
raps
yeah,
about it so much.
yeah,
And I started drawing like scenes from Harry's Omegle bars, and I had this idea that I was going to draw every single Omegle bars. And then after the first one took me like 3 weeks, and he's releasing one every week, I was like, "This it'd actually be like impossible to ever do this." The drawing part was like really like I've never been where I'm like, "Oh, I feel inspired to do this artistic piece." Like I've never thought of my art that way
hmm,
until somebody asked me to do a piece for his wife she runs a like a home for battered and broken kids or you know like kids
yeah,
that were
yeah,
abused and it's like a charity I don't know what it'd be called, like not like a shelter but where they take in these kids
yeah, yeah,
and he goes, well, I don't want it to be like just about that. I want it to be about how they leave happy, like they come in
yeah,
broken and they leave happy. And
yeah,
I like got tears in my eyes and I was just picturing what I was going to draw. And this usually doesn't happen for me at all.
yeah,
And I drew like a little girl's face, and half of it was like a broken mirror in black and white, and the other half was in color. And it was like love was somebody was holding a like a tube of love that was sealing the cracks in. And
oh,
it just, I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like, this is the first time in my entire life that I drew like from my emotions and had
yeah,
this vision. But then, like I said, when I looked back at my pieces, I could see where like this one's a little bit darker than that. What was going on
yeah,
at that point? And it just never really, it never clicked in my
yeah,
head that
that
in
you
my,
were actually drawing your emotions. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And so once you did that piece and you had this epiphany about it, and this moment where you thought, oh, actually I can use my emotions to create something consciously, because we always use our emotions when we create. But
Right.
maybe when you were really, getting conscious of that in front of that piece that you did, is that something that you look back upon and think, well, I can really tap into that and use it to create some special pieces? Because not all pieces are really emotional pieces. I mean, there are some that are, intended just to be, really, really cool or something. And it doesn't have a lot to do with that. But if anyone asks you to do something that is a little deeper or a little more emotional, do you go back and try to have to feel the emotions when you're creating?
Yeah, I never have. I've never made it like a conscious effort, and I wish I could. I wish I could turn that on and off. And I think that my brain is wired to like not show the emotion, to hold everything in. And I've actually been more emotional now for like the last year than I've ever been. And I think that it's been a fight. Like when I realize that I'm depressed, or I realize that I'm having all this like negative, because before it'd just be like the worse it got, the happier I looked, because that's
Yeah,
just the way I was. I'm like,
yeah,
no, I'm not dragging anybody else down around me. I'm always going to be positive, and nothing's too hard. And I part of it, I had kids for the last 20 years, so it's like you don't want to show them that when we were losing our house, or when we were, when we lost our job, or whatever the
yeah,
case was, however bad things got, we still tried to never let them see that.
yeah, yeah.
And now they're all grown and doing better than we are. So we're very, very happy and proud of that. So it's like, but now it's almost like, well, now, you know what? I could kind of like relax and be a little depressed now. And
Yeah. Is that something you've ever talked about with your kids?
no, not
No.
at all.
So they they have like no idea that this is something you've been feeling more the past year, or that you allow yourself now to be a little more emotional? Are you never emotional in front of them?
Never in front of them. No.
Why do you think so?
I don't know. I think it was just ingrained in me since I was a kid. And, like my wife is very open with them. And she has a really close relationship with them. And, uh, I I kind of feel like, okay, she's got that covered. And you want to learn how to rear naked choke somebody, come on, I'll train with you and I'll work out with you. Or you want to learn how to draw something, I'll be happy. You want to go camping, I'll teach you how to make a fire from scratch and things like that. But and it's just my old school style, I guess. But
Yeah. It's not, just understand, it's not coming from any place of judgment on my part. It's
oh
just,
no,
trying to understand how people work. And I think I've been doing a lot of work on myself, and in the past, 15 years or so. And I've really we all know that our upbringing and the influence our parents have on us is so, huge in our lives, and that we carry that with us into adulthood. And that there are some things that are really ingrained in us that are really difficult to change or to evolve from that. And so in the past few years, I've really seen to what extent that is true, and that if I want to break free from some stuff, or if I want to um, really be my own self, I really have to separate from some things that are really, deeply inside of me, because I was brought up that way. And so I've always tried to think about my kids. So I have two kids. My daughter's 17, my son's 12. And I've always tried to think of them as future adults. I don't know if that makes sense. And I've always thought, now they're really small and they're really cute, and everything, is kind of easy. But someday this person is going to be 25, 30, 40. and they'll have to they need the tools to work their life out and know how to be in healthy relationships and how to deal with their emotions and stuff. So I had to work a lot of stuff out with myself to be able, to go there with the kids. But I think it's so again, I'm not judging anything here,
Right.
because everyone has the tools they have in life, and we don't choose which tools we get at the beginning. So I think then it's like going on a quest in a game or something. You're just trying to to find new things, and a lot of people you meet in your life sometimes bring new tools,
Oh
and
yeah.
where you can really learn things. And that's happened a lot for me. I don't know if you probably had, from all the people you've been telling me about, you probably had a few that really opened up some doors for you emotionally.
Yeah, I think that's I think I've always pictured myself as like passing on skills and knowledge of things, and never that um I could teach you how to deal with this emotionally, and I didn't think that that was even a basket that I had available to
Yeah.
tell you. I could tell you what not to do. Like I could tell you a lot of like the things that I did in my life that were really bad, and I could tell you how to avoid doing that, but never like this is how you can deal with this, and when somebody makes you feel this way, or that and that. It's just I think I am now getting better at it, but it's still like you said, creating like you want your kids to become good adults, and I felt that way because we were very very poor, and I didn't know anything about banking or credit or any of that. And then you get
Yeah.
into the military, they force you to, they you sit down at a desk and they go, okay, here's this bank that you're going to sign up for, and you still really don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Now you have a card, you have a bank account, and your money goes into it, but you don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I got to teach my kids about credit and about investing and things like that.
Yeah.
And then it's one of those. It's hard because you go like, okay, I told them. No, you just hope that they do the right thing, and you
Yeah,
watch.
well, then I think you have to detach from that somehow, because I know that whatever I tell my kids, they're still their own person, so they're going
Yeah,
to do what they want to do. And but then I prefer just um, teaching them stuff, and they can do what they want to do with it. But at least I passed it on, and that they can choose to use that or not.
my son was a Ren fan way before I was. So my son found Ren when he was dropping Jenny's tail, Screech's tail. So he was already
Okay,
following
right?
Ren back then. And when that was like kind of like a bonding moment for us because he would want me to watch this new video that Ren posted, and
Yeah,
I'd be looking for videos online of Ren, but couldn't find them because he was so small at the time.
yeah,
And when I would find one, I'd be like, "Hey, check out this! This is like that guy Ren. You like he's singing on the road with this other guy," and it would be like a bonding moment for us. And
yeah.
we had my son was breakdancing. I used to take him to breakdancing events, and
Okay.
4 or 5 years old in the circle breakdancing. He was really good. Um, but as he got older, and then I used to take him to jujitsu with me, and
Oh,
as he
cool.
got older, it was like completely like stopped. It
Yeah,
was nothing that I would do. And so when Ren started to come out again, when he started to really pop off and blow up, I'm showing him these videos, and it was almost like now Ren's not cool to him because everybody knows who he is. It's not this like small guy that he knew about when nobody
yeah.
did. And then I got to let him meet him and hang out with him. So then it kind of changed it, turned it
So
around.
that was cool.
Yeah, it's like,
So then
you give me no credit for anything that I'm doing, but now you get to meet Ren because of me. So
so then that was cool again. Yeah, right.
yeah,
So yeah, to go into that, so I found you because I actually watched them. Harry Max freestyle and with Ren's reaction, with Victus where you're drawing, and that's where I saw you for the first time. And I thought that drawing with the Seven Sins was just, it was amazing. I thought it was so cool.
Ren told me he was going to be, or he said on his Discord that he's taking his crew to Vegas to celebrate his number one
Yeah.
album.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm in Vegas. Like, he said, the date that he was coming, and the date he was coming, I happened to know that Mark Ribier was going to be in town that weekend. But I asked Ren, I said, hey, do you know who Mark Ribier is? Do you fuck with Mark Ribier? And he's just like, oh my God, so hard. I love that guy. He's like such a huge inspiration. And he started posting clips of him. And
Yeah.
I just happened to tell him, just like, well, he's going to be here while you guys are here, like at the Brooklyn Bowl. And he was like, get tickets, we'll all go together. And I was like, no way. Man, it was just so cool. And then we went out later that night, and I brought the drawing with me, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to give it to him, but yeah, we ended up hanging out a lot more than I thought we would, and so I gave him the drawing. And
the time he was in Vegas then?
Yeah.
And so that's where you brought your son with you?
Yeah. My son. So my son was like 13 or 14 when he found Ren, but
Yeah.
by the time Ren came and hung out, my son was 18, so he was able to go to the show with us, and
Oh,
it
cool.
was really cool. When we were posting, Ren and his team were posting pictures of them at the Mark Ribier concert. Everybody was wondering, who's this long hair? My son is very handsome. He's got long blonde hair that like flows, and and everybody's like, who is that guy that is with Ren? And they're like, just start seeing people going, like, I think that's RikaShae's son. Like,
yeah. So then you went to Super Cool Dad real fast there.
Well, when we dropped him off, we hung out with Vic and Joe the next day, but when we dropped Ren and Vic off the final time of the night, because everybody else went home, all of his other guys went to bed, and they still wanted to go out and party. We dropped them off for the final time, and Lori, my wife, looks back and she goes, "So what did you think?" And he goes, "That was cool." And he said this, or forget how it was worded, but his response was, "This will be the greatest day of my life, and I don't think anything's going to top it." And I was like, "Oh, like,
yeah,
high
well
five the
done.
wife."
Yeah.
Yeah, like, we did that shit.
No, that is so cool.
That was another cool thing, because meeting Vic in Vegas, told him that I wanted to do a song with him, and I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months went by, and we finally got a song done. And then when we were going to SGP, Vic scheduled a show in Brighton before SGP. And I told him, I said, "Hey, man, I'm going to get to see you perform live. Like, we're going to Brighton, we're going to SGP." And he's like, "Wow, we should do our song together." And I was like,
Oh, wow.
oh my God. Like, it was in the back of my head like that. Maybe
Yeah.
this could happen, but
Yeah.
also, like, I'm 46. I've never performed before. I performed breakdancing on stages in front of crowds and stuff, but
Yeah.
never rapping in front of anybody. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
here we
It's a
go.
very different thing.
So
Yeah.
nervous. I was so nervous.
And so what about any projects on your side then? What about 2025, and did you think about changing up some stuff on your channel, or are there any new projects you want to talk about?
I have a lot going on in my real life, and what really hit me was, because I was writing some rhymes, and they were like about stuff that I don't want to release a song what I'm talking about. Because I do try to stay positive, and I try to stay uplifting. And my last song was, well, not I just released a song yesterday.
Yeah.
But my song before that was like about like the communities there, and it was inspired by the Ren community had lost a couple of people to suicide, like in a very short period of time, within 2 weeks of each other.
Oh.
2 big members of the community, like one was from Discord and one was from Facebook, and they were heavily involved. So this wasn't just like people that you'd see around, like somebody leading groups and organizations and things.
Yeah.
So we did a song for that, and And then we went to SGP, or I went to SGP. And then when we got back, like my home situation has been kind of messy. And everything that I write is kind of negative, and I'm like, I can't be the guy that just released a song talking about like the community's there for you and uplift. And somebody that I'm really close with, another reactor, another renegade, hit me up and said like, yo, we're gonna do another song soon. And I was like, not right now, man. The way I'm feeling, I don't really want to write anything. I don't
Mm.
have the motivation. And then I sent him a message, the next day. Like, fuck that. Like, I can't have this mentality. Like, I can't let this win, and let's do it. So I do have, as far as projects going on, I do have 4 other songs, 3 of them with other people that I'm
Yeah.
ready, almost ready to release. So a couple of them I'm waiting on the other artist, and one I'm waiting on the person. As soon as we're done here, I'm going to send it to them to master it and mix it. And
Okay. But I think, well, first of all, I'm really sorry you had to go through all of this year. It's a lot to take in a matter of months. I mean, there are some things that some people experience only once in life, and sometimes things just compile into, a few months where it just it feels like it's all piling up, and it gets, really heavy to carry sometimes. But um, I don't think that writing um sad or angry or depressing songs about things it is actually a negative,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been getting a lot of my friends saying like, you
because
should be putting
it
into.
allows you, first of all, even if you never show it to anybody or you never release anything, it allows you to get it out. So that's really the first positive about it, is that you can really express whatever you want to express, just for you. And then if you can make something of it, I mean, the best example of this is Ren, because he's like taking some of the, like the worst parts of his life and making amazing songs out of it. So I think he can really flip the switch on stuff by using art and artistic expression, whatever it is, to work through it too. And maybe if I were you, I would keep everything you wrote this year,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
maybe in a few years you're going to come back to it.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
and
for
it's gonna
sure.
sound different. And maybe in a few years you're gonna, you'll think back at what you wrote and think, oh, maybe I can do something with this, and it'll, um close the book on some stuff. Because I think it's really important to that's the beauty of art, is that it just allows you to get it out and to just, not keep it bottled up.
Right, right.
Yeah. So it's actually not that negative of a thing, even if you think, these are fucking depressing songs.
It's not necessarily only like the depressing part of the songs, but it's like, I don't like to. I've never been one to like air out my laundry, or say what's bothering me or who or why this person, and
Yeah, but you're allowed to.
yeah, yeah, you are.
You are allowed to say whatever you want. I mean, I think as long and with rap especially, it's very particular, because you can really say things in certain ways because it goes with all of that culture too. So you can really turn the lyrics in certain ways that you wouldn't talk like that in real life, but you're allowed to do it, by writing the lyrics. So I think expressing stuff that you could use that to really express stuff you can't really say, in real life too.
It's a good point. It's a very good point. That is very valid.
So it's also I think about just hanging in there and just continuing to do what you want to do, and because you do have a purpose in your channel, as I do in mine. Something you want to put out there, and some part of you want to show, or some purpose in the videos, and I think it's important to just keep on going and just keep doing that, because that's what you like to do and that's what I like to do.
Right, right. Yeah, and I always look at whenever I get down on myself about my music. So when I release my videos, reaction video gets 3,000, 60,000 on some, uh, and then a song, I release a song and it gets 100 views, and I'm just like, I have 30, 40 people that I work with. I have, five, six, seven people in my family. Like none of them, like I get really, this is what's been my biggest fight is like the support. Like I don't get the support from my friends and my family, and like my biggest supporters are people that I don't know or I've met one time or I only
Yeah,
talk to them online. And it's like I look at an artist like Ren, who's way more talented than I am. Like I can't do with my music is nothing close to Ren, not even close to comparable. And he went 10, 15 years without, being known at all. And then, he finally blew up 2 years ago or whatever. And it's, so I'm like, why would I be so like worried about like, my 15th song that I've ever written and recorded, like it only got 300
yeah,
views or 1,000 views. Like that's really,
exactly. And I think it's a very it's a very wrong idea that the world is giving us. It's like you because there have been people who've blown up from one day to the next, and suddenly, and they're famous. But I mean, that happens to 0.00001% of people on YouTube. I mean, it doesn't really happen in real life for everybody. So it's kind of this false idea that's in our head that we could just, from one day to the next have this huge channel and do loads of stuff. But that is not actually not how it works. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine who is a singer. She's a professional singer, and she's been professional singer for I think 12 years now, or 13 years. And she said, well, it usually takes artists about 15 to 18 years to really, blow up and have, if they're consistent with their art and what they do and with the work. But it does take that time. It is a wrong idea to think you can just become, um, just live off of that and have loads of money by just doing what you love from one day to the next. So I think it's so important to just continue to produce, and that's the idea. That's what I thought. There are some days where I'm a bit depressed, and I beat myself up because I didn't do anything that day. And I'm like, well, Lisa, you could have done this and this and that, and your idea yesterday was to work on this edit and to do this and to post that, and why didn't you? And I really beat myself up, and then I think, well, it's just about not not abandoning the idea and just continuing to do it, even if it's not every day and every hour of the day.
yeah,
So yeah, I would just hang in there if I were you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know I'm the same way. I'm like, sit and make a billion excuses why I can't do something, and then the next day just bash myself for not doing anything. And it's a rough cycle.
Yeah, it is, and it's not always easy when you're going through some stuff. Like you said, you've had this year, and I've had loads of stuff too this year, and it's not always easy to put the blindfolds on and just continue going on as if nothing happened. It's not always that way, and you can't always do that. And there are some days you just have to sit in it
Right.
and
Yeah,
wait for it
yeah.
to pass.
Yeah, and I think for what's been going on in my life too, like last year was amazing. Like everything was just like this whole new fun, exciting thing. And then this year, even though I did have some great, great moments, like the best moment of my life, I mean, going to UK and performing on stage with Victus and
Yeah,
getting
that
the
is really amazing.
that SGP was just so much, I mean, just absolutely fun. And all of that, like I would think about that and I'm like, this has been a great year. But like now, like going through birthdays and holidays, without like talking to my family. And I think what makes it harder is like last year I lost my dad, and the year before that I lost my mom, and
Mm.
now it's almost like my main go-to like support system is gone outside of my family. And when you and your family are not on the same page, like then you would look to your like original family and they're not there anymore, so it's like it just makes you feel even things are rough.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that.
And that was we were talking earlier about like putting your emotions into drawings or letting like your art. um when my father passed last year, the day that we got back from his funeral, like I did a mural for him in my backyard, and it was like it wasn't even like that was just that was the only way I could get my mind off of it, was to just go paint. And that's never really happened for me. It's never been like where I'm feeling really pissed off and I'm like, you know what, I need to go draw something, or I need to go write this song. Because usually I feel like you have to be in your best mental state in order to do that stuff. But that was such a huge release for me to go in my backyard and just paint a mural.
But you should really keep that in mind, because it's such an important moment in your life to have that understanding that you don't always have to, well, because it's not only that you don't always have to be your best self, you can't always be your best self. It's just impossible. You can't be like the fun, nice, happy guy every day of, of the year. It's just impossible to do. So there are some days where you have to live through the emotions you're going through, even if you're not the funniest, happiest guy ever. And I think when the people that really love you accept you for who you are, with all your flaws anyway. So I think when people really know you and accept you, then they accept you even on the bad days. So you don't always have to be, you know, funny and happy,
That's right.
because
That's right.
that's a shitty mask to wear. It's a difficult one to look really happy and fun when you're feeling really shitty inside. That's a hard one to wear.
Hey, that got me through like my first 20 years of life or so. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you were saying. But it is so difficult because it's so you disassociate so much with yourself in those moments, because you don't know who you are anymore. You do, because everybody thinks you're that really fun person, outgoing, everything, blowing up jokes, and everyone's having fun with you. And then you go home and you feel the worst you've ever been. It's just so hard. And I've learned to not wear that anymore in the past 2 years. I'm 38.
yeah,
And I
understood.
think in the past 2 or 3 years, I've decided that, if it's a bad day, it's a bad day. That's it. So you can get me on a bad day. I'm not, it doesn't mean that I'm going to disrespect you or anything, but you just have to deal with it, because I'm not responsible of what other people are feeling. I'm
So
only responsible of my own feelings,
I like
not
that.
how they come across.
I like that. Something that I definitely need to work on.
Well, it's really hard. It's really, really, really hard to do, but it's very liberating, and it's easier to not force yourself into molds that in which you don't fit anyway. But yeah, I've forced myself into a whole lot of molds that in which I didn't fit at all, and until I couldn't bear it anymore. So it's easier to it, it's not easier, but it's you feel freer to do it like this. Not easier with everyone, but it's freeing.
Yeah, it's
But
very
yeah,
well
I
said.
recommend. Is there anything you want to add for the renegades watching, and any message you want to put out there?
Mm, I gotta say, man, the Renegades have that there's so much support in the community, and I just have so many that I hung out with. I got to meet them, and the love and the support has it really means so much more to artists and to the people than you would actually ever believe that you're doing for them. And it's really really cool. I've loved it, and I love to be part of the community. And also, like, they kind of hold me on this pedestal that I don't think that they should. I was just saying it on another podcast when we were out at SGP. Every morning we were doing pain salesman full blast on VG's speaker, like one of my best friends' speaker, big speaker. Get up out of the tent early, first thing in the morning, and we'd play pain salesman. And all these people would come out of their tents and come over and just dance with us. But there was so many people that did, like, I could see them wanting to come over and they never did. And then, like, the end of the festival, somebody would say, "Oh man, I seen you over here. I wanted to come say hi so many times, but I never did." And I'm just like, "You should have come hung out with us."
Yeah.
Because I love this community. Even like there's a lot of infighting in different platforms and different groups started because not everybody's going to get along. You still love Ren, but all that, like, this, every group can support me. All of you guys. You guys are so nice and so sweet, and very very helpful in some rough patches of my life.
Well, I'm really honored that you took the time for me, and I'm really happy we did this together because I think what you do is awesome. And I really love, seeing all of the art, and I've listened to you, not all of your songs, but some of your songs. And I think you write great lyrics too, and you should just continue doing what you love. It's so important because you've gone through that experience of not creating anymore, which was not really a nice time for you, where you felt the need at some point. So you should just continue doing that. Whatever happens in your life, you just have to hang in there and continue creating, because I think that's part of what you were made for, because you're really, really good at what you do.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you for being on this episode, and I hope to see you soon.